Hello, and welcome to everyone who's joining us. We really appreciate you coming out to watch these presentations today. We have 13 wonderful presentations today to share with everyone. We know that this is, a Friday afternoon, gorgeous outside, so we really do appreciate you taking the time to spend some couple hours with us this afternoon and learn a bit about the projects that our students have been working on. They've put a lot of time and effort into these projects. And, we really do want to share them with all of you. Just to give you a basic sense of what the Capstone project is, this really is the culminating assignment of our students' graduate career with us. They work with a local or national or international organization, and they really put together a project that is of high quality, that adds value to the organization. And along the way, they're using the skills that they've gained during the MPA program and applying them to a real world challenge or problem. Not all of these run perfectly smoothly. So that's something to keep in mind while you're watching these presentations. Some people set out on a course, they establish targets for themselves, and real world doesn't always work that way. So they don't reach those targets necessarily. But they put forth the effort, they get as far as they can, and they really do put their best foot forward. So we're so thrilled to be able to share this with everyone. And I wanted to just show you this quick, screen here, just so you can get a sense of, the breadth of where our students have been this semester. So we have nationally based organizations, we have international organizations, we have local nonprofits, we have local public schools, we have state organizations, we have organizations that are at the University of New Hampshire, and we have a few of our cities represented throughout the state of New Hampshire. This truly does represent the type of work that our students do in the MPA program, and it truly does represent the diversity of interests that our students have in the MPA program. They are engaged in public service in any number of different ways, from the government to nonprofit to the private sector. They're engaged in this work, looking towards public service and looking towards serving their fellow citizens, their fellow community members, their fellow residents. So we're really proud of all the work that they did, and we're looking forward to sharing it with you. So just as a brief overview of how this is going to work today, our students were tasked with distilling their work into a 3 to 5 minute presentation. So really quick, there are 13 presentations. So that will get us, in a time frame that was reasonable for us and reasonable for all of you. We will have breaks after a set of presentations, and we'll allow you at that point to do questions and answers. We ask that you put questions and answers in the Q&A box, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen, and then we will facilitate that conversation after each set of panels. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first panel. So here we have Nate Burnitz is going to be presenting, Leah Calverley is going to be presenting, and Heidi Holman is going to be presenting. And while their themes aren't perfectly together, ultimately, they are looking at some aspect of the natural world, whether it be through the Nature Conservancy that Nate looked at, working with UNH Cooperative Extension and the New Hampshire Farm Network that Leah looked at, or looking at the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission. So without further ado, I am going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to turn it over to Nate. And Nate, the show is yours.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nate Burnitz, and I had the good fortune to do my capstone project on a policy area of personal interest and significant importance, conservation of climate resilient and interconnected landscapes in the state of New Hampshire, and how state agencies affect their conservation through governing statutes, administrative rules, best management practices, and agency discretion. The Nature Conservancy's comprehensive, resilient, and connected landscape study had some broad conclusions, and for New Hampshire, because of a lack of focus, planning, and understanding among decision makers, biodiversity across New Hampshire continues to be threatened and compounded by climate change, habitat alteration is causing fragmentation, degradation, and loss. Increasing human population, fragmenting political discourse, and forest loss are threats, to be sure, but there are opportunities as great science is available to inform the work, and there's a good foundation of connected, protected lands to build from. While municipalities are primary decision makers on most land use and property owners have significant discretion on their own land use, state agencies, despite federal restraints, have delegated authority and discretion, while legislators have the ability to change laws that govern these agencies. The Nature Conservancy's Resilient and Connected Landscapes project yielded broadly a series of high-level strategies and opportunities. My research focused primarily on expanding land conservation and influencing future development, but touched on other opportunities as well. I approached this project like detective work, starting by understanding the issues as well as I could independently, and then conducting interviews that would often give me leads on new angles to pursue through additional research and more conversations. I couldn't talk to everyone I wanted to talk to, but my capstone sponsor provided context, feedback, and suggestions throughout the semester, and I was fortunate to also be able to attend public hearings on proposed rules and statute relevant to my topic as well. My analysis and recommendations boil down to 3 buckets, starting with threatened and endangered species, which are listed and protected at both the state and federal level. Administration of the State Endangered Species Act was thrown in flux by a 2019 Supreme Court decision, leading to conversation and eventual rulemaking on alteration of terrain that had been years in the making. It's yet to be seen how statute and rules will ultimately change, but there are real opportunities to increase the transparency and impact of this policy in ways that could improve or diminish protection of resilient and connected landscapes, which are often important and potentially even critical habitats for threatened and endangered species. For land and habitat, one thing is clear. Uplands lack the same kind of protection that habitats like wetlands have. Just as clear with this area, with wetlands, with really all regulatory work, there's a lack of a big picture. The oversight is siloed. It seemed to be in my research that everyone could acknowledge that funding was a limited factor, both in infrastructure and planning. That very forward-thinking climate change resiliency work has occurred on the seacoast, and it's lagging behind in the interior. And there are real opportunities with that, as well as looking at criteria for permit programs and grant programs. Wetlands are one of the most protected ecological features in New Hampshire, and recent rulemaking at New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services are generally well regarded. Yet there are again real opportunities to improve the Aquatic Resource Mitigation Fund, to rethink buffer protections, and to increase support for municipal planning for regulators to use a more holistic lens to evaluate project impacts and to proactively plan for climate impacts to these sensitive ecosystems. While all my coursework helped grow my toolbox as a practitioner, I found some courses especially helpful in this capstone project. I was fortunate to be able to take administrative law earlier this semester. It's hard to imagine having been able to do this work without that course. I want to thank my professors, classmates, my advisor, Carolyn Arkand, and Dan Braunberg, and the entire Carsey School for what's been a rewarding and enriching graduate academic experience. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nate. We will now turn to Leah.
Hello, I'm Leah, and I worked with UNH Extension to help lay the groundwork for New Hampshire Agricultural Service Provider Network. So agricultural service providers are any organization that provides a service for agricultural producers or farmers within the state of New Hampshire. And the problem we are looking to solve is, how do we connect all these service providers? Agriculture is a very broad industry. There's many organizations, and they're not all well connected. It can be difficult for farmers to find the resources they need And COVID-19 made that worse. It showed us that we really needed online resources available for farmers. Maine faced the same problem just a few years ago, and they founded the Maine Beginner Farmer Resource Network, which has now become the Maine Farmer Resource Network. So this project was loosely based off of Maine's, but we had to change it so that it would fit for New Hampshire. So for my project, we did 2 Qualitrix surveys. We started by surveying UNH Extension, the Food and Agriculture team, because they're going to be the backbone of this organization. Their input is very important to how this new network should be laid out and how it should run. And then we surveyed New Hampshire agricultural service providers that already worked with Extension to collect information about their organizations as well. In the Food and Ag Team survey, we had 17 respondents, and we found that 59% of them are already involved in some sort of network that serves New Hampshire farms. When we asked how would this network of agricultural service providers help them better serve their clients, the number one answer was improvability to give farmers referrals to other organizations. The second and third most popular answers was potential for new collaborations across organizations and increased understanding of services that are already available within the state. Then we moved to the agricultural service provider survey. So far, we've had 22 responses, and interestingly enough, all of them have said that they collaborate with other service providers already. 91% of them said that they work with other providers frequently. 9% said occasionally they do. When we asked if they were already a part of a network, 71% of them said that they are. The top 2 networks that have come up is 7 organizations have said that they're a part of the New Hampshire Food Alliance, and 6 organizations have told us that they're a part of the New Hampshire Ag Financiers. So with both surveys, we asked organizations, what organization do you collaborate with routinely? So who do you already have a strong connection with? We took this information from both surveys and entered it into Node Excel to create this network map. Now on this map, I made Cooperative Extension red because they're the backbone of this new organization. So I really want to stand out who they already have connections with. Interestingly enough, the 4 organizations that are on this map that are labeled that they don't have connections with all fall under the USDA. Also on this map, because of the sheer number of organizations that people said that they work with, I took out all the organizations that were only listed once, just to clear it up a bit. And I labeled the ones that had 3 or more connections. So the organizations that only have 1 or 2 connections so far, we really need to dig in to see if they are really going to fit in this network. Are they an agricultural service provider? We need to find out if they really do provide a service for farmers. They might be an organization that works with agricultural service providers, but isn't necessarily a provider themselves. It was truly, I'm really thankful to have been given the opportunity to work on this project. It was really a privilege to get to work on a project that's going to help the ag community as much as I believe this one will. So I'd like to thank Amy Papineau and Olivia Saunders for inviting me to become a part of this project and help them lay the groundwork for this exciting new network. Also in the MPA program, there were 3 classes that I really kept thinking back to a lot while I was working on this project. I'd like to thank those professors and also Dr. Bromberg for all of his support over the last 3 years. Thank you.
Leah, thank you so much. That was excellent. And just a reminder to all of those folks that are tuned in, if you have any questions for Nate or Leah, please drop them into that Q&A and we will get to them right after Heidi's presentation. So please feel free to put them into that Q&A at the bottom of your screen and we'll make sure that we address them. And now I'll turn it over to Heidi, who will be presenting about New Hampshire Fishing Game.
So we are change agents. This is the first message I took home from the program. I work for a state agency that follows a commission structure of governance, and as of next year, we'll be the last state agency in New Hampshire to do so. Since it's so uncommon, many people don't know the roles and responsibilities of the actors who play in that commission structure. It's very similar to a nonprofit in the fact that it has a board, and the board is accountable for the vision of the organization and also appointing an executive director. Commissioners are intended to represent the people that they serve. This includes historically hunters and anglers. They're appointed by a governor in staggered 6-year terms, and the purpose is to buffer policy when administrations change and instead of appointing new heads of the organization. Conflict often drives change. They can be two sides of the same coin. And recently, my organization underwent significant leadership change. This included a number of newly appointed commissioners and also the replacement of a longtime director. This created significant uncertainty and unrest. It resulted in a petition by staff to reappoint the director, several headlines in newspapers across the state, and everyone just couldn't figure out how this could happen and if it was even legal. Eventually, senior staff and commissioners were called into the governor's office. The outcome was a memo outlining actions that were meant to improve trust and relationship within the organization. I pitched a proposal to the senior staff to represent them through this revision process, and they accepted. They brought my request to the commission, and they accepted my help as well. Through these events, we established the first 2 steps of Cotter's 8-step change. The memo created urgency, and the commission and the senior staff formed a coalition supporting the work. To complete the task, I followed the usual processes you would expect. I held several meetings, interviewed different consultants, created a questionnaire to collect input. And although it was a mundane task, revising a manual, it was an opportunity to create communication and start to establish trust, which is the foundation of any change event moving forward. Throughout the process, I had the opportunity to look at specific areas that caused tension in the organization with various lenses. And reframing offers the opportunity to put a new spin on the mess you're in, to quote Paul Dan. I had the opportunity to share these new mental maps with the coalition and to incorporate various items into the manual to solidify them into the future. One of the main outcomes of the project was highlighting the collaborative strategic development process, the strategic plan development process between the commission, the director, and agency staff. And with ours coming up for revision in the near future, this gives us an opportunity to continue to build on this communication and trust and potentially reach the 3rd step of Cotter's change to create a shared vision. I want to thank everyone at Carsey who has provided so much education over the last few years, my coalition at New Hampshire Fish and Game, specifically David Patch, the commissioner who really led me along and made things happen. And that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Heidi. So I'll ask Nate, Heidi, and Leah to turn your video back on there. And if there are any questions for our students, we'd love to take them now. If not, you could always, save them, throw them into the Q&A throughout the presentations, and we'll be happy to take them. Thank you so much to Leah, Nate, and Heidi, and also thank you so much to the sponsors that allowed them to work through these projects. So Cooperative Extension, Nature Conservancy, and New Hampshire Fish and Game. We really appreciate you allowing our students to jump in and do their work. So thank you to everyone, and thank you to the 3 of you for really excellent presentations.
Thank you.
So we'll be moving on to the second part of our capstone presentation. And at this point, we are going to have a bit of a focus on education. We are going to have Rachel Del Greco, who's going to be talking about the Seacoast Charter School and initiating a process related to strategic planning. We're going to have William McMaster, who worked with child welfare education for the Child Welfare Education Partnership at Granite State College. We're going to have Monica Snavely talk about the comprehensive school mental health system, working with Methuen Public School System. And last, we're going to have John O'Neill talking about a pathways project, an educational pathways project about New Hampshire's future workforce needs. So all related to education in some way, shape, or form. And without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Rachel.
Hi, my name is Rachel Del Greco, and I worked with Seacoast Charter School on a needs assessment to help them prepare for some strategic planning. SCS is an arts integrated charter school that serves 300 students in Dover, New Hampshire, and one of their biggest milestones was their move from Exeter, New Hampshire to Dover, New Hampshire in 2015. To gather information for my needs assessment, I conducted a board self-assessment survey, which assesses how board members function both individually and as a whole. I also conducted board and staff SWOT analyses, as well as a staff strategic planning survey, which assesses how the organization functions as a whole from the staff perspective. Most mentioned strengths in the staff SWOT analyses were teachers and staff. Weaknesses were lack of funding. Opportunities were community outreach and integration, and threats were also lack of funding. Staff believe that they have a heavy workload and a general lack of support, and that their salaries are not comparable to those at other schools. They believe that they do need some positions filled in order to get this support, and they need some updated software as well in order to track things like grades and attendance. The staff also mentioned that they need a more unified curriculum and communication across grade levels, but that their teamwork across grade levels is stronger than their teamwork school-wide, and they are a very dedicated staff. Lastly, staff would like to see an increase in a positive tone from the board, as well as some term limits for board members and some more diversity among board members. The most mentioned strengths by the board were dedication, quality of staff. Weaknesses were lack of space. Opportunities were grants and federal funding, and threats were the political climate and public perception. Board members believe that they don't have a clear sense of their roles and responsibilities or awareness of certain policies, and that the board lacks an orientation process for new members and reorientation for those who have been there longer. Also, they mentioned that the board meetings need some more focus. Members need some more diversity and skill set and more accountability. And there is some confusion between what is a board committee and what is a staff committee. Lastly, the board did recognize that they do need to be more supportive of the staff. My recommendations for SES would be to seize opportunity. In the area of personnel, this means creating and filling those needed staff positions and updating, and checking workloads and salaries annually. In the area of development, I recommend to expand. SCS has just as many students on their waitlist as they do enrolled, which is an opportunity for them to create a new campus or a sister school, maybe even a high school. And I also recommend that they explore opportunities to integrate arts in the community, specifically for teachers from other schools, as well as updating some fundraising and donor software. Financially, I recommend that they apply for federal grants, and this can be done by a grant writing committee with a member who is an expert on the topic. I also recommend that they provide more autonomy over the budget to the head of schools once the budget has been approved, and that they outline what decisions need a vote after the budget has been approved. Lastly, in the area of governance, I recommend that they determine what is a staff committee and what is a board committee, and outline membership for each. Create some needed board positions like a time and goal monitor, a board champion, as well as a board staff liaison. And then lastly, I recommend that they perform some general board maintenance, such as the board self-assessment, and do that regularly, for instance, before your annual retreat. Courses that helped me from the MPA program were nonprofit management, human resource management, and the seminar on community equity and engagement. These courses helped me learn how to conduct a SWOT analysis, learn what questions to ask when I'm interviewing a nonprofit leader, make a case for a human resources director being part of a strategic plan, as well as facilitating a dilemma protocol and analyzing power sharing within meetings, and helping to recognize what voices may be underrepresented and how to raise those voices. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rachel. We really appreciate the work. We will now turn it over to William, who will be discussing the Child Welfare Education Partnership.
Hello, everyone. My name is Will McMaster. I'm the Quality Assurance Specialist at the Child Welfare Education Partnership, which is the organization I decided to work with for my capstone project. So the purpose of this project was to create a process for ongoing curriculum revision at the Child Welfare Education Partnership, which is an entity at Granite State College contracted by the Division of Children, Youth, and Families to provide training opportunities for DCYF staff, foster parents, adoptive parents, residential facility workers, and other partners within the community of child welfare professionals in New Hampshire. This process is important to first promote collaboration within the organization and with external partners. It also increases efficiency and effectiveness of course development. And finally, it helps to maintain accountability to the organization's mission. And CWEP's mission is to strive to enhance the quality of care for children in placement by providing competency-based, accessible, and local training. So to develop the process, I first started by looking at course evaluation data to determine common curriculum needs with our learners and instructors. And from there, I led focus groups to determine the current process for curriculum revision at CWEP. And I led two major groups, first being actual curriculum the curriculum development team at CWEP, and then the second group was with instructors to get different perspectives. And then from there, I was able to lead a work group to actually develop the process itself. So before creating the curriculum revision process, I first developed a concept model based off of concepts and other research in this area. Several models for curriculum development use a non-linear approach, and they utilize course feedback and communication with external partners to feed the cycle of curriculum revision. Here, the model shows that course updates are established based on needs outlined by DCYF and also from course and instructor evaluations, with competencies being the driving factor behind course objectives. This process flow diagram puts the concept model into practice, with curriculum revision either taking a top-down or bottom-up approach. Depending on the nature of, say, a policy from DCYF or a need identified based on course feedback, a course overhaul might be needed, which is shown in the center of this model. To take a closer look at the course overhaul process, each step has a corresponding output, and this is important to ensure that the needed information is carried over between each steps, and it maintains accountability within the organization and within each actor involved in the process. So some other recommendations that I came up with based on this project are it's vital to maintain collaborative efforts between everybody involved, in this case, the CWEP curriculum development team. Next, it's important to ensure, like I said, that every process produces an output with detailed documentation throughout. And then finally, it's important to set clear timelines and expectations and to communicate those with leadership, subject matter experts, and with DCYF. And then some things I learned throughout this project was an important aspect of leadership is observing emergent changes and transforming them into process and policy. And then it's important to give each member involved ownership over the process to really create that environment of innovation. And then finally, organizations are just as much the relationships and personalities of its employees as it is its structures and processes. So I'd like to thank June Cairns, who was my advisor throughout this project, the CWEP team, and of course the Carsey School for making this all possible. Thank you.
Will, excellent job. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I am now going to turn it over to Monica, and Monica is going to share her project related to the Methuen Public School System.
Hello, everybody. Monica Snavely, and this semester I had the opportunity to work with Methuen Public Schools on their mental health and behavioral service marketing and advertisement. So Methuen Public Schools has implemented a framework defined as the comprehensive school mental health systems. Within this system, the comprehensive student support team, which provides universal and comprehensive support through trauma-sensitive English language learning, social emotional learning, universal design for learning, and positive behavioral interventions and supports. The comprehensive student support team develops the integrated systems and framework that is universally provided for all students. These teams and frameworks enable the school district to build a system that guarantees all students are provided with a high-quality educational experience by providing a multi-tiered support system which focuses on the social, emotional, academic, and behavioral continuums of education. I had the opportunity to work remotely under the supervision of John Crocker, who is the director of the school mental health and behavioral services at the Methuen School District. For my capstone, I focused on the marketing of the multi-tiered support systems, informations, and frameworks for families by creating a brochure. This brochure will highlight the focus points of the services available to students, the importance of schools implementing preventative mental health and behavioral services on different levels. I became familiarized with the demographics of Methuen Public Schools. Methuen, Massachusetts had an increasingly growing number of Hispanic or Latino families move to the area in recent years. According to the United States Census, 29% of the population of Methuen, Massachusetts is Hispanic or Latino, Spanish being the second most spoken language in Methuen. So I took that as an opportunity to also create a brochure in Spanish for the Spanish-speaking families and their community. To design the brochures, I decided to follow the social marketing plan presented by the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. And the goals include, one, what is my social marketing goal? Who is the primary audience? Who are the most influential people within the audience? What do you want this audience to do? What are the 3 most compelling messages for the audience and the individuals? What are the best ways to reach the audience, such as channels? And it's influential members? How will you use the channels to reach your audience and its influential members? Cultural competence, and how will you evaluate your plans, such as identifying milestones and creating a timeline, which I have shared on the screen here. And these two figures show the completed brochures to date. Given the difficulty with scheduling around the current times, there are still some changes that are scheduled to be made. And here is the translated into Spanish version. I did not change any of the acronyms to translate into Spanish because those would stay the same within the district or the services provided. Instead, I translated the descriptions and definitions of each of the acronyms used in the brochure. This was to make the acronyms recognizable and understood on a more universal level for the families of Methuen Public Schools. Courses such as Foundations and Theories of Public Administration and Leadership Theory and Practice were my introductions to preparing and conducting a presentation in the public administration field. These courses not only taught me the theories and roles of a public and nonprofit organization, but they also taught me how to improve on my presentation skills and give an effective yet informative and concise presentation. During this semester, I had the opportunity to use knowledge and techniques I learned in MPA courses I completed, along with the skills I have acquired throughout my upbringing, professional and personal experiences. My capstone experience paved a way for me to test my education and skills in a real-world situation in line with my future goals. Using the perspective of a parent of public school students and a former English language learner myself, I had the opportunity to develop a visual that will play a role in the awareness and knowledge of mental health and behavioral services for children for both English and Spanish-speaking families. I am looking forward to furthering my education and professional development and experience in the field by using the skills I have acquired through this program to work with families. As I look back at my educational journey at the University of New Hampshire, I want to take the time to thank all of the professors and their hard work with all of us, and John Crocker for the wonderful opportunity, my family, and everyone here for just shedding some more education on their specific projects. Thank you.
Monica, thank you so much. Really, really excellent. And just great to see such a range of presentations from all of our students. Nicely done. I am now going to turn it over to John O'Neill, and John is going to be talking about career pathways from service year programs into the workforce.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, my name is John O'Neill, and I want to first thank everybody so far for joining in today and all the great presentations. It's been profoundly fascinating, so thank you all. My capstone project has been focused around leveraging national service resources as a network for the state of New Hampshire through the creation of a Director of Service Year Workforce Pathways through legislation. So the issue that this endeavor is meant to address is New Hampshire's shifting populations throughout the state and the ongoing workforce shortage that our economy is witnessing. The goal of leveraging our national service resources is to attract younger folks and families to learn, work, and ultimately stay in the state. So according to state-produced reports, this workforce population issue has been going on for some time now before the pandemic, and it's projected to go on long afterwards as well. There were several state agencies that put out reports saying that by 2040, every New Hampshire county is projected to see a natural decline in population, which equals less folks living in the Granite State to fill open positions for jobs. And then last year, the New Hampshire Employment Security Office reports that the following areas listed here on the slide are projected to see workforce shortages between 2018 and 2028. That includes manufacturing sector areas, education roles, both public and private, and public sector jobs, focusing more like on state agencies. So in response to that, this ongoing problem that is, New Hampshire, its general court established a committee to research existing career pathway models between service year programs, higher education institutions, employers, including hiring and admission policies, credit for service scholarship programs, and residency requirements. The report found that by 2025, more than 2 out of 3 jobs in the state will require some kind of post-secondary education or certification. That's really equaling out to about 50,000 more New Hampshire citizens that require a high-value post-secondary credential, which is beyond the normal growth for the state. Given this large number, a large number of public and private entities across the state have embraced a common goal that's referred to as a 65 by 25 initiative. That's basically shorthand for, it's projected by 2025, 65% of the state should hold a high value credential, either through college or through an industry recognized certificate or credential or license. This has been embraced by a number of areas: the state government, agencies, the university system, community college system, private businesses and industry leaders, and nonprofit organizations. Given the fact that there's such a wide spreading network that's required to achieve this goal, it was discovered that national service and its resources would be the glue that would hold this network together. So what's national service? Real quick, very basic explanation is it's a system of voluntary public service. It can be both civilian and military, and really popular examples would be AmeriCorps, the Peace Corps, and military service, more specifically for the state of New Hampshire, the National Guard. In addressing this issue, I tackled this with Representative Matt Wilhelm as my sponsor to design a role that could address all these things that I've mentioned before. So what we formulated was a framework of what's called the Director of Service Year Workforce Pathways. In our drafted legislation, hopefully that will be amended into the omnibus bill. The director shall be responsible for ensuring that its components, each having a unique character and mission, operate as a well-coordinated network. And more specifically, these components are, the New Hampshire's National Service Community, AmeriCorps and Peace Corps alumni, the military community, that's New Hampshire National Guard, veteran community, and the DMAVs, which is the Veteran Affairs Office in the state. The State Department of Education, various public sector state departments, and private sector industries and organizations. Now, even though a few of the fine-tuned details are still being hashed out with this legislation, we were able to establish that the director's main overall purpose would be to promote and place military veterans and alumni of national service into either a service year, an affordable degree path or credential, and or ultimately a meaningful career in New Hampshire. And in summary, New Hampshire is experiencing this ongoing workforce shortage due to shifting demographics. A solution to filling these gaps would be in attracting young families, would be to leverage national service, both civilian and military. And should the state establish this director position, this individual will be able to coordinate and grow these resources in New Hampshire, resulting in a more prosperous future for the state. Now, really briefly, reflections on how the MPA has benefited me in this process is that I've applied what I've learned last summer during my independent study that focused on the state's National Guard and DHHS response to COVID as a network. So that came in handy when talking about these types of networks. In-depth explorations and research around nonprofits was extremely helpful. So that class was great. Applying what I learned about administrative law, pertaining to drafting legislation, was a huge asset during this capstone. And of course, theories and frameworks around public sector leadership and organizations. That was everything. Really describing how we could make this individual in this director position lead the different components that would be responsible for. And lastly, I want to thank everybody. My advisor Dan Bromberg and all the MPA peers I have here, and to the staff at Carsey School. It's been a huge honor to learn and grow with you all during these unprecedented times. Thank you guys at UNH for all the understanding of constant military activation and dealing with this stuff, with this process. I look forward to taking what I've learned here into my career in public service. So thank you all.
John, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing such an interesting topic, and obviously something relevant to the work that UNH does and some of the work that the Carsey School does. If John, Rachel, Monica, you want to turn on your cameras, and Will, We have received one question, which we could jump in on. If anyone else wants to throw some more questions out there, we'd love to take them. So this one is for Rachel. It says, Rachel, I understand that you briefed your results to the Seacoast Charter School. What was their response to your recommendations?
First of all, thank you for your questions. I believe I wasn't telling Seacoast Charter Schools anything that they didn't already know. I think it just takes a third-party perspective sometimes to come in and say, hey, this is what you guys need. And I do think they were wondering, okay, what now? What do we do with this information? So I just let them know that the next step would be to create a strategic planning committee, because they do want to do that strategic planning process soon, and to use the information I gave them to refer back to if needed.
Excellent. Thanks, Rachel. It looks like we have another one in there. Will, can you share why the work you did was so foundational to the organization going forward?
Yeah, so in its current state, the Child Welfare Education Partnership is relatively new, and we're going through a lot of changes. We're developing course competencies to really drive a lot of our curriculum efforts, and we want to sort of change the organizational culture to one that's more proactive rather than reactive to needs that come up. So going forward, it's really going to help us be more effective in our training efforts.
Excellent. Thanks, Will. It looks like that is it for questions. So once again, thank you to John, Monica, Will, and Rachel. Excellent job. Really important work that you're all doing. So it was great to see that work, come through and in action in the presentations. So thanks so much. We will now flip to our third set of presentations, our third panel. I'm capturing these more as tools that our students were able to offer different organizations. So skills that they've developed, in the MPA program that they were able to apply. So in this group, we have Hannah, who was working with UNH IT department, working on a suite of tools related to Target X. And she'll talk about that. We have Tony, who was assisting Citizens Count. We have Nicole, who was working with the Department of Health and Human Services. And we have Lexi, who is working with Care Canada. And all of them were able to apply different tools that they've worked on and learned throughout their studies to these organizations. So we will start this group of presentations with Hannah. So I will stop sharing my screen and I will turn it over to Hannah.
Okay, so my name is Hannah Marble, and for my capstone project, I worked with the Enterprise Technology and Services Department at UNH. And like Dan said, did kind of an overview project around some recommendations in regards to Target X that they were looking for. So the UNH ET&S department oversees a contract with Target X, which is a CRM tool, a customer relationship management program. It provides an email service, which is exactly like it sounds, an online application for admissions, and events management tools. And the ET&S department was really just looking for information on user opinions, and through some different methods, gathering that information to inform some future policies and practices. So the project goal right here at the bottom just kind of encapsulates that information, and it was to really just inform future planning. So my final project was a written document with some data involved in it, which was provided to UNH IT. So the methods that I used, there were several initial steps that I took. I'm not from the IT world, so I really wanted to kind of familiarize with what I was talking about before running focus groups and surveys. So there was some background research that I had done, and then creation and distribution of the survey through Qualtrics. And again, just that background research. So the survey was distributed to 94 individuals, all who use Target X in their day-to-day or less than day-to-day jobs, and 71 individuals completed the survey with a response rate of 78%, which was a really great response rate to see. And through this kind of data collection in the survey, there were pretty thoughtful questions distributed, really just to kind of gain a baseline of where people were with Target X, if they liked it, if they didn't, if there were any improvements they wanted, and things of that nature. The second method was through focus groups. We did 10 focus groups over March 4th and 5th with Plymouth State, Granite State College, UNH graduate and undergraduate, as well as USNH. And all of those individual schools do use Target X in different capacities. And, oh, I just realized I'm not sharing my full screen. Sorry, guys. Hopefully that's better. So the Target X conclusions were not anything that the department wasn't overly aware of. My feedback from them was that these were things they were already working on or understood, and there's just some of them listed there. So through the focus groups, I was able to pull out some common themes about Target X that are included on this slide, and just some feedback. And it was interesting to kind of sort through that feedback and those opinions and see what was a common theme and what was maybe an outlier, and came to these following conclusions. Just give everyone a minute to read those. And again, like I said, nothing overly surprising for that department. And finally, my course connections. I started my MPA about 1.5 years ago, I believe August of last year. So whipped right through it. But the courses that really impacted my capstone work were economic analysis and development and statistics. Both of those classes gave me kind of the background to really know what was good data and what data represented and how to interpret it and things like that, which was helpful for more of the specifics in the focus group information and the survey information. And in general, for my MPA, I'm a child welfare investigator and kind of newly juvenile probation officer. The public management, ethics, public safety, conflict and change, and equity engagement courses really helped me just in my day-to-day work. And I was able to kind of put some of those new learned practices and things like that into play in my work today. And that's it. Just a quick thank you to Dan for all of the advice and things over the past 1.5 years, and for Amy and the whole IT department for letting me take on this project.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Hannah. It was great to learn about this, and great to see you put some of those skills to use. So let me flip over to Tony. And Tony, you could jump on. You could share your screen and share your video and share with us your project.
Thanks. Yeah, Citizens Count, nonprofit organization. They're located in Hampton, New Hampshire. And just a brief overview, it's largely a website with several thousand, I think up to 20,000 visitors, 25,000 visitors every month. Its mission is to provide objective information about issues and candidates, over 1,000 candidates every single election cycle. There are forums to have civil exchange and discussions about candidates and key issues. And also it's intended to help people like you and me get connected with our elected officials, both locally in our towns and statewide. Again, it's largely a website, but there's also a very robust Facebook community. They have a podcast. There's an email newsletter that goes out monthly to over 2,500 registered members. And they really stand behind their mission of providing unbiased reporting on public policy and other issues. Again, this in-depth candidate research on over 1,000 every election cycle, and they do an exceptional job with legislation tracking. In fact, I think that's really what they do particularly well, better than any organization in the state, candidly. They have every single piece of legislation clearly laid out in an organized way on the website. You can go and see pros and cons. So it's a really good resource, and encourage anybody to visit. So it was a market research analysis project. So some of the goals of the research were to find out how people are engaged with civics and policy activity in the state. Have they ever taken more steps to get involved? And specifically, how are they interacting with citizens count? What prevents them from visiting the website? Are there things that aren't working well? Is it easy to navigate? What tools would make the website more engaging, or the Facebook page, this sort of thing. So methodologies we used, qualitative research. So it started with an initial screening survey, followed by in-depth interviews. We offered a $25 Visa gift card to people who agreed to do the in-depth interview. And so I contacted, we sent the email newsletter out to 2,500 members. Surprisingly, only 23 responded, and completed the initial survey. We did in-depth surveys. I was a little nervous about that, and I talked to the host, Anna Brown, the director of research and analysis. She was encouraged. She thought it was great. She thought that we could really get a lot of valuable qualitative data out of this, and we did, and I did. And so I interviewed these 23 respondents, took detailed notes, transcribed them, etc. What did we find? So almost without exception, members think experience has been favorable, which isn't surprising given that they responded to the survey. They all agree it's nonpartisan, it's unbiased. A lot of legislators and elected officials engaged in the survey and responded. So they keep very close tabs on this website, which is great. They want to be involved and they like the work that Citizens Count is doing. Most donate. Recommendations, people need to know how to get engaged. So they want a civics 101 on the website. How do I reach out to a local representative and elected official? And then you see here, could the material be a little more compelling on there? Sure, it's not sensational, it's objective. So it might fly in the face of the mission, but still that was some of the feedback. And then of course, emails. People responded almost across the board that they engage with the website when they get an email, yet Citizens Count only sends an email out once a month. So you'll see that was one of the recommendations that I made at the end of the paper, among some others. Again, not a lot of respondents, but really valuable qualitative research. And so most use a desktop or laptop computer, which I thought was interesting. Secondarily, they're using a cell phone. Most go to the website. Secondary was Facebook. And then as a third, people use email. I guess the courses that I used the most, human resource management to a degree, probably most policy and program evaluation with Carolyn Arcan, and then care work, public policy, and COVID-19 with Carolyn Arcan. Both classes were the last two classes I ever took in the program, and extremely apropos for this project, because one was on qualitative analysis, the other public policy. So thank you for the opportunity to be in the program. I really think I'll utilize these skills in my next endeavors, and congratulations everyone, and wish you the best of luck with everything.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tony, for sharing that experience with us. We're now going to flip over to Nicole.
Okay. So I did my project with DHHS, New Hampshire DHHS. For anybody that doesn't know, that's Department of Health and Human Services. Actually, just to start with the first page, we created guiding principles, best practices for remote work for individuals. Prior to that, some individuals with DHHS had been doing remote work, but it was not formalized. So I did the work with DHHS, as I mentioned, within their human resource department, to develop guiding principles, practices for the remote work. The idea was not to have this COVID focused, even though the state of New Hampshire employees were working remotely during this project. We really tried to focus it only on universally across the board on regular times. So the problem we were working on is trying to create user-friendly process and procedure for the supervisors and the employees to both have input when doing the research. It really showed that having the employee have the input was really important also. And it's so that it can be documented and set up across the board. The agency really felt it would be beneficial to be able to create these documents to be able to be portable, but still be overseen by the supervisors so that individuals weren't just working anywhere with no guidance or supervision. So the basic things they asked for were the guiding principles. They wanted a learning material to be used to provide to the staff that they could view information and how to best utilize the documents that we created. And then user-friendly tools to document the remote work situations, be able to document what equipment were being used, where they're working, timeframes. So there allows a lot of flexibility. One of the ideas behind this remote work is so that in future, the DHHS can use this as a good recruitment tool to be able to better recruit individuals because they don't have to work in Concord. And then addressing the problem. Steps taking were doing the research. First, we met with the team. The team had started prior to me and had done some surveys. They had done a highlight, a couple meetings for a task force for what they wanted to provide for input on this. Virginia was amazing, my host, and she gave me all the information, the feedback. I met with the deputy commissioner and a couple of people from the team. And then I did the research behind it. There was quite a bit of research on COVID times, and we did not want to focus on COVID times. However, I was able to find information that would work for all of it. And then develop the learning tools, developed, edited. There was a lot of input from different people in this project, so we kept making edits to make sure we were meeting the needs of everything they were looking for. We created the documents. They created a pilot, and it just finished up. Coming up here in last week, they were supposed to have all their feedback, and they did a Survey Monkey to be able to get the feedback on that. In conclusion, we created 6 different tools and a PowerPoint learning tool for them that they can utilize for the supervisors and for the staff to both utilize. Be it input from the supervisors on how they would like the situation to look, and then also the employees. There's revisions that they know they'll make, and then the plan is to be able to introduce it across the board for all DHHS workers where it fits as of July 2021. And the idea again is to be able to offer to anybody that's eligible for it under their circumstances, working environments. Best reflections for me and connections were human resource management. A couple of these actually overlap with a lot of the things I was working on, but foundations gave a lot of information on that and really focusing on changing the environment. State work can be pretty stagnant and not make changes, and they really want to be fast forward with making this change. Also, org management, public management techniques. And the one thing I would say that I took most out of this is I am a hands-on learner, so it was really great to be able to do a project, to be able to tie everything back to what I was doing. So that's it. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and Virginia for hosting me, and that is all.
Thank you so much, Nicole. So I will now turn it over to Lexi.
Hi all, my name is Alexandra Kareed, and for my MPA Capstone project, I engaged in project monitoring and dashboard development with CARE Canada. CARE is an international humanitarian organization with a mission to save lives, defeat poverty, and achieve social justice. It has 14 member organizations working with country offices around the world. Last year, it was determined that the 4 country offices managed by CARE Canada would be switching hands to CARE USA, as CARE Canada removed their international development branch. Those country offices were those of Chad, Kenya, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. CARE Canada sought to develop a real-time project monitoring system to track the handover of the 4 country offices from CARE Canada to CARE USA. CARE Canada kindly welcomed me to their team as a volunteer to develop a dashboard which would update in live time on CARE's shared cloud drive, SharePoint. There were separate implementation plans for each of the 4 country office handovers. The shared drive with the implementation plans could be accessed and updated by all involved staff for each project. Since staff were collaborating on these projects from around the world, the plans were constantly updating. To develop the dashboard elements, I conducted interviews with the transition lead and administrators at CARE Canada, Chad, Kenya, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. I studied best practices through case study research, and I learned about Excel techniques for dashboard construction, which complemented what I had already learned through my statistics coursework. This dashboard was the final product. It updated in live time, so this is a screenshot from early on in my involvement in the project. The dashboard breaks down tasks by completion status and by priority. It includes metrics such as how many incomplete tasks were overdue and what percentage of high priority tasks were complete. There were tasks in the implementation plan which were not due by the handover deadline, so we noted completion of pre-handover tasks. If a staff member added a task, changed a deadline, or changed a priority status in the implementation plan, all this information in the dashboard would shift in live time. In addition to the live time dashboards, I compiled a consolidated overview dashboard for CARE Canada's senior leadership team until the country office handovers occurred. This dashboard includes data from the live time dashboard, as well as a breakdown of overdue tasks by department. It's easy to draw a connection between a statistics course and dashboard development skills. What is not as initially evident from this project is what else I took away from my time at the Carsey School. This dashboard would not have been possible without the soft skills, which are much too often overlooked, although they are clearly instrumental to developing useful products and fostering positive outcomes. The ability to carefully listen, clearly communicate, ask clarifying questions, partner with stakeholders, frame situations, and think critically about outcomes we wish to achieve are all skills that I was able to further develop during my time at the Carsey School, and which will undoubtedly serve me well as I continue my career in public service. I'm so incredibly grateful to CARE for bringing me on board as a volunteer. I want to offer my special thanks to Rob Maroney, Kadri Ferrari, Andrea Santos, and I also want to thank all the talented professors at the Carsey School for fostering an engaging and challenging learning environment. And thank you all for your time today. And I believe now we'll welcome questions for Hannah, Tony, Nicole, and myself.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lexi. And I would just note that Lexi is one of our few dual degree students. So Lexi completed both her master's in community development and her master's in public administration. And by bridging those two programs, really developing a pretty wide skill set, and doing that, you're able to, dual count multiple classes. So really a great experience, and so glad that Lexi was able to carve that out for herself. Excellent presentation. And let me turn to the questions. It looks like we do have one for Hannah. So let me pull that up. Based on your data gathering, what was identified as most effective features of TargetX, and what areas did users think needed improvement, and why? And I don't know, how specific you could talk about things or not, but whatever you're able to share.
Yeah, so just kind of generally speaking, the online application had really solid reviews from people. And I think a lot of just the generalized function of TargetX is really valued by people that are using it daily. Some of the less liked factors were that it just wasn't super intuitive for people. And I think part of that, like I mentioned, there were some outliers of people who had issues that other people were raving about as great things. So I'm not sure how. I think we'd have to dig a little bit deeper into more specifics on that to get really concrete answers. But yeah, there were reviews that it wasn't overly intuitive. There were some deficits, and it took a lot of kind of customization to get it where people wanted it. But overall, the function and the purpose seemed to be really valued by people.
Excellent. And we have a question for you, Lexi. Great work. What did you use to develop your dashboard?
For this project, we used Excel. There are other softwares available which can develop even more sophisticated dashboards. However, given the constraints about accessing the implementation plans from different countries and having it housed on one shared drive, Excel was the best format in which to include both the implementation plans and the linked monitoring dashboards.
So, and just to follow up on that, Lexi, so individuals would be updating Excel on their end, and then that would update the visuals in real time, I guess, as they were updating them.
That's absolutely right. And there were 4 separate implementation plans. So the dashboard was uniform, but embedded into the 4 different implementation plans, which enabled senior leaders to go into each country transition plan and see the progress of each project.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so just for those of you, watching right now in the audience, just kind of think about the range of tools that these students all used in their work. You kind of think about the interviews and surveys that had to be done for Nicole to develop what she was doing, the longer format surveys that Tony had to do, so the qualitative, really digging into that qualitative, and then Hannah really had that, the surveys that were hitting just a larger number of people that you could really digest. And obviously some of the great work that Lexi was doing using stats and Excel. And so just really excellent and just really high quality work. So excellent job. We have 2 more presentations left, if I'm not mistaken. So let me share my screen one more time and introduce our next panel. So we will be having Jacob and Dario are going to be presenting. Jacob worked with the city of Salem and Dario worked with the city of Concord. So we will end with our 2 city government capstones. And without further ado, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll let Jacob, you share your screen, and it is your turn to take over.
All right, so I'm sure everyone is at least tangentially aware of the housing crisis. If you don't have the misfortune to have firsthand experience with it, New Hampshire has a relatively fixed housing supply with increasing demand. And a recent study reported that the state's deficit is anywhere or somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 units. This has been compounded by a workforce shortage that predates the pandemic, particularly within the trades. And there has been further strain due to increased construction costs as of late. To provide context regarding the housing environment in Salem, we analyzed the housing supply and charted the housing growth rate. Salem is a community that within the last 5 years has experienced significant growth, as you can see here. In 2019, Salem issued the most permits for single-family homes and the second most for multifamily in the state. As housing has expanded, there's been increasing demand from community members and municipal officials to ensure that a portion of new construction is affordable. This exercise was to evaluate the workforce housing supply, and it was a multifaceted exercise as there is also a fair share requirement in the state's workforce housing statute. To evaluate the supply of workforce housing in town, we used the town's assessment database to analyze housing sales data from January 15th through the 3rd quarter of 2020. We then used estimated maximum affordable purchase price, which is estimated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it's derived from the full median area income as a baseline. So this column here represents what would be affordable across the 5-year period in the town of Salem. What we see is that the median price in 2015 was relatively close to the maximum affordable rate, only about $1,500 difference there. However, Salem has progressively got less affordable, and the supply or proportion of units that are affordable has decreased from 50% in 2015 to 40% in 2020. All the while, the new cost of new units has increased pretty dramatically as well. And we constituted a new unit as one that was built within 5 years of the sale. And you'll note that this is the total housing supply. So this is comprised of manufactured homes, single family homes, and condos. The median cost for a single family home has increased 30%, and the stock of affordable homes for sale has decreased 10%. Here we have a house that sold at an affordable rate in 2020. As far as affordability for condos, the median cost of a condo has similarly increased 25%, and the affordable stock for sale has decreased 5%. Interestingly, the price of a new condo, which we categorize as having been built within the last 5 years, as I mentioned, has increased 58%. We have a great deal of condos that have recently been approved that are seeking occupancy that sell from anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million. Luxury condos. Some of them are associated with the development at Tuscan Village. And there's also another development that is just a higher end development that is currently being built out and will be occupied within the next year. And again, this is a condo that was sold at the affordable rate. And also just a caveat, there's a significant amount of age restricted condos in Salem. So even what is represented here, those are included in here. So even some of those affordable units might not be accessible to all members of the community, you know, if you're not, in this case, 55 or older. As far as affordability of manufactured homes, 7% of Salem's housing supply is comprised of manufactured housing. It's a great source of affordable housing, obviously. The data we collected indicated that all of the manufactured houses sold over the 5-year period were sold at affordable rates. However, you'll also notice that the average cost of a new unit has increased 126%. It's still a relatively modest rate at $304,000, still below the maximum affordable rate. But just for instance, this unit here sold at an affordable rate in August of 2020, so $333,000. And it was listed this past spring for $379,000, and it sold at $400,000 in April. So it appreciated 20% in 8 months. So that's kind of indicative of the housing market, not necessarily just in Salem, but in Southern New Hampshire in general. So with that in mind, acknowledging that the market is kind of continuing that trajectory towards increasingly more expensive housing units. We performed a search of active listings on New England Real Estate Network. We discovered 46 current listings, 20% of which were listed at affordable rates. Of those listed at the affordable rate, 7 were manufactured homes, 1 was a condo, and 1 was a single family home. So again, Salem's percent or manufactured housing supply at 7% really kind of constitutes a lot of the affordable units here. And this house listed here, it's listed for approximately $140,000 more than it was purchased for in 2016. And again, this is kind of indicative of the things to come as Salem and several of the new units that will come online will be sold at these rates. And in addition to this, we did take a look at multifamily. Salem's housing stock is comprised 30% of multifamily. And to do that, we interviewed members from other planning staff, and we had a comparative sample. I won't go into this in great detail, but that was kind of secondary to the housing supply study that we conducted. As far as course connections, statistical analysis was, of immense help during this process. A lot of it was database data collection, and that was probably the most useful, some of the skills that we learned in that course. And then also the theory, particularly, and talking to other planners from other communities. That was helpful kind of to see, as administrators, what they felt their roles were. Some were kind of more neoliberal approach and felt like they should let the market kind of dictate things. And, here in Salem, we do have a workforce housing ordinance, and we've tried to provide some additional workforce housing through that mechanism. All right, thank you.
Excellent, Jacob. Thank you so much for sharing that. Great analysis, super detailed. We'll have a question for you that we'll pick up after Dario presents his work. So Dario, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you all. My capstone project was looking at municipal parking post-pandemic, or how parking has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic since we've all been at home, not necessarily going out and about exploring downtown areas in developing and developed cities. My partner was the city of Concord, and we decided to do a comparable analysis looking at other municipalities throughout New England, and we chose Portland, Maine, Burlington, Vermont, and Holyoke, Massachusetts. Concord, New Hampshire's parking budget has done well in recent years, but it saw a slight dip due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Fiscal years 20 and 21 were affected by this pandemic, but let's take a look back at fiscal year 19. There was a significant disparity between the revenue and expenditures in that year. Why? They had recently increased their parking rates by a vote of the City Council and received some pushback from the public. So we wanted to explore possible solutions going forward in order to avoid any political ramifications for addressing the special revenue fund for Concord, New Hampshire's parking program. In looking at Burlington, Vermont as one of our comparable cities, we saw that they also had some impact in the COVID-19 pandemic, but not nearly as significant as Concord had. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get line items from the city of Burlington, but they're thriving downtown, and this budget and projected budget for next year indicate that the parking fund will do just fine through the COVID pandemic. Portland, Maine, however, is a totally different comparison. We see that their revenues for public parking in the city actually exceeds expenditures significantly. Those revenues go back into the city's main budget and in effect lowers the property tax rate for the city of Portland residents and businesses. Now, let's learn from Portland. They have many similarities with Concord. 3 parking garages downtown, demand increased with development, but additionally, they keep their expenses low by having just the right amount of enforcement with part-time staff and making some adjustments during COVID to make sure that their revenues maintained. Where's our room to grow? Portland's program returns funds to the city's general funds. Ultimately, this is where Concord, New Hampshire wants to go. But the debt service remains Concord's largest hurdle. So, how do we address the debt service or the general balance of the special revenue fund for the parking program? Over the course of this capstone project, the American Rescue Plan was in its infancy to signage, and just this week, it was announced that the funds were beginning to be released to localities, counties, and states. Concord, New Hampshire itself is expected to receive just over $4 million with strings. That being said, in order to make sure that we make the most of this money and don't send it back to the federal government, the recommendation to the city of Concord is to use some of that to cover the shortfall of the special revenue fund. This will bring the fund back to pre-pandemic balance projections and ensure that other functions of the city are not impacted due to the setback with this revenue fund. One of the long-term recommendations of this project is based upon our interactions with the peer cities. There needs to be more of a regional clearinghouse for municipal governments for better public policy, not necessarily uniform, because we understand, especially here in New Hampshire, local control is ingrained in government practice. However, we can look to what happened in North Carolina when multiple municipalities and their associations came together to establish a North Carolina benchmarking project, recommending different forms of programs that could best fit municipalities in a growth phase and after they've grown. During this capstone project, I found several courses integral to making these recommendations. A new public administration. and how to connect the dots from what originally was Woodrow Wilson's understanding to what we see now with public-private partnerships and intergovernmental relationships. Financial management with Professor Arkan and policy and program evaluation really provided the methodology to finding these, comparing the cities, but also making recommendations in the end. Now, in recommending a North Carolina benchmarking project, I believe the values in Professor Dan's organization and public sectors class really provide a pathway forward to increase communication and collaboration with municipalities, whether they be cities or towns in New Hampshire or across northern New England. Thank you for the opportunity to take part in this project. I want to thank Carlos Baya and Matt Walsh with the City of Concord, as well as City Manager Tom Aspel for looking at other options available to the City of Concord going forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Dario, so much. What I'm going to do now, I'll ask Jacob to jump on, and if all of our guests could actually stay on with us for a second. Jacob, you do have one question, so I'll address that question. And then Nick, what I'm going to ask you to do is if you could elevate all of our participants to presenters so we could all turn on our videos together. So Jacob, the question for you is, those are very large price rises. Did your analysis compare against the 2008 subprime crisis at all?
Yeah, unfortunately, not. One of the large undertakings was to kind of create the database, and unfortunately, the assessing department didn't have a ready-made spreadsheet. A lot of the task was to input the sales data into a spreadsheet. So we had about 2,700 sales from 2015 to 2020, and we didn't go back quite that far. What we did acknowledge from 2008 was the fact that that was really where we saw that downward trend in the lack of the housing supply. And if I had that graph where it showed Salem's housing supply, if you go out to say 2005 in the late 90s, you see a pretty high provision of housing, and then it kind of dwindled out, and that's kind of really how we got here. But anyway, short answer is no, we did not.
Great question, and yeah, I mean, appreciate it too. I mean, Jacob, really great analysis. Regardless of how far you're going back or not. So what I've just done is I've promoted everyone to a panelist at this point. I have a feeling the folks that have stuck with us for the solid hour and a half are probably folks that you all know. So either our organizations that we've worked with, or some family and friends. So at this point, what I'd invite you to do is, if you'd like to enable your cameras, enable your microphones, and flip to gallery view so we could just see everyone that's joining us. I would imagine some of our students wouldn't mind thanking all of you. And I just wanted to say, thank you to everyone for coming out. Thank you to all of our family members. Thank you to all of our organizations that continually support us year after year. Congratulations to all of our students. This was a long 14 months that we've all made our way through. And, we typically have these capstones and then go out and celebrate together, enjoy each other's company. Hopefully we're not too far away from doing that. It seems as if we're pretty close. So our director has promised us that the Carsey School will be throwing a big party for all of you once we get to that point. And we look forward to doing that. So once again, congratulations to all of our students, congratulations to all of our family members, and thank you to all the organizations that have supported us. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Congrats, everyone.
Congrats, everyone.
Thank you.
Done. It's all over.
All right, everyone, have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you,
Thank you all
everybody.
so much.
Thank you.
Take good care.
Thank you.